Have you ever asked yourself why your birds or animals die of the same disease that you vaccinated against? Today, we are going to discuss about vaccine failure uh, at our channel, Impact Farming 256. This is Dr. Hanif. I am a veterinarian working in Uganda. I mostly do with birds, that is poultry, and large and small animals, especially cattle, goats, and sheep. Our first thing, what is vaccination? Eh? I actually wrote it with biosecurity. Biosecurity, we are simply looking at the activities or the things you put in place to prevent diseases from coming to your farm or to stop spread of disease within a farm. For example, if this is your farm and you have your animals within here, it doesn't matter the type of animals. It can be cattle, it can be sheep, it can be broilers or layers. So all the things you put up to prevent the disease from coming to attack these birds or these animals, or the things that you put up to prevent the disease from moving from one animal to another, to call biosecurity. So, for example, you can put up a fence, you can put up a footpath. Some farmers actually, some will put up other inside fences. Then you can put up corridors within, different housing, and so on. Now, vaccination is one of the strong methods of biosecurity. So, vaccination is a form of treatment immunity against either disease or a pathogen. Of course, a disease is caused by a pathogen, so either way, it is the same thing. Now, we are going to consider about vaccine failure. For example, you give your birds the Gomboro vaccine, and then the vet tells you that your bird's actually suffering from Gomboro, maybe Newcastle, it can be FMD. We want to look at some of those factors. So vaccine failure is simply a situation where the vaccine fails to conquer or to confer immunity against a certain pathogen. Yet you have given your birds the vaccine, for example. So it is in two ways. One, it can be either primary vaccine failure or secondary vaccine failure. Primary vaccine failure is simply where the vaccine or your body fails to respond to the vaccine. So it is totally failure. There is nothing like ill setting of any or production of any antibodies. So your body fails to respond to the vaccine totally. There are a lot of factors that can cause that. Two, secondary vaccine failure is where there is a certain antibodies that are produced, or you first have the immunity coming up, and then it fades with time, or you need to boost. So that is secondary. Now, all these ones here can be caused by the factors that are actually summarized here, and we are going to discuss one by one, so that as a farmer, ensure that you take caution of all of those factors, so that you don't really incur double costing. You have paid for the cost of the vaccine, you have paid for the labor to vaccinate, and then you have actually paid for the treatment. Of course, most of the vaccines are viral, so even treatment may not be there, so you incur losses in terms of mortalities. Transport and handling. Now, those ones who have gone to school for very many blackboards will call it, they call it cold chain. These vaccines actually they are more like antigens of these diseases. So they are made in that they're supposed to be kept at certain temperatures, so they are temperature specific. Temperature specific. There are those which are supposed to be in the freezers, like frozen, real ice. There are those which are supposed to be in fridges. Fridges, we mean either negative, maybe 2 degrees Celsius, either to 8 degrees Celsius, around there. Then there are those which are supposed to be in liquid nitrogen. So it depends on where your vaccine is supposed to be kept. Now, as a person going to vaccinate, you need to be very conscious about the cold chain. First of all, when this vaccine is being shifted to your country, for example, mine is Uganda, you need to be very, very conscious with the cold chain. Of course, some of us buy the vaccines from the pharmacies, so you can end up buying a vaccine from a pharmacy that actually didn't observe the cold chain. So that means that this vaccine loses the potency to actually deliver the purpose. So, of course, what you can do is to simply be very conscious with where you buy the vaccines. Does the person buy from has a standby generator, for example, in case power goes off? Do they have a standard fridge? You need to assess as a client, because if you do it wrong, of course, even you, when you're buying, you need to have a cool box. Some people will get flasks, put in the viral, and then close, of course, with some ice. Some will have tins in whatever way, but you need to maintain sure that the cold chain is maintained up to vaccination time. That is one. Factor number two is boosting of your vaccine. Now, most of the vaccines that actually on market, especially the live vaccines, need boosting. Let me show you a graph, a simple one. So, of course, if these are the immune titers, and then this is time, I'm not very certain of how the graph is, but trying to bring out the picture. For example, that is the primary, the initial vaccination. Some people will draw it like this. It will come up slowly. Then it will start to fade. So you need to boost again. Of course, some vaccines you boost continuously. For example, in layers, we have all the breeder stock, we have the infectious bronchitis, where you continuously have to boost every month. Same for Newcastle. You need to boost every month. So if you don't boost your vaccination program, you will actually have issues where the birds will suffer of the same disease that you vaccinated against, and you start complaining just because you did not boost. For example, I've seen farmers complaining about Clostridia diseases, that they vaccinated against Clostridia, but Dr. My goats are dying. And when you pick the sample, you actually say it's Clostridia, just because they vaccinate the first time, and they tell them to vaccinate after 6 months to boost the other vaccine, and then they actually don't do it. Some boosters are not continuous. You can boost like twice, and that is okay. Some boosters are continuously, so you need to boost every time. Now, wrong administration of the vaccine. This is very, very, very important, the most critical one. Farmers will actually buy the right vaccine. It is well transported and handled to the farm, and then a vaccine which is subcut, the farmers give IM. Supposed to give subcutaneous, and then you give intramuscular, or the other way around. You're supposed to give intramuscular, you give subcutaneous. Sometimes it's about the dose. You're supposed to give, for example, 0.5 mils, you give 0.2, or you give a meal. Of course, overdosing is also very bad, because you'll overexcite the immune system, or sometimes the animal just becomes sick instead of having the vaccine actually working. Then sometimes it is about of course, I've said route of administration, I've talked about the dosage. Sometimes it's about the dilution. Most of the vaccines actually have a diluent, so you just have to mix the right ratio. Remember, they tell you, they say, for example, they give you a viral, powder, then they give you the diluent. So you just have to mix and then you inject. But there are vaccines where, for example, Gomboro, I've seen where they recommend giving oral administration. So someone gets 20 jelly cans and they mix 1,000 doses of the vaccine. So it means that this bird has to take a lot of water, almost like 5 liters of water for it to actually have the right dosage in this kind of vaccination program. So we need to be very, very, very conscious with how we administer the vaccine. Straight away from the root, I said about the dosage. We need to be very conscious about the dilution of the vaccine. Um, number four is about sometimes quality issues. Quality issues, of course, we may not control so much about the quality of the vaccine, where it's being made from. That's work of the NDA or the regulatory body. Our major concern is about the quality we can control of. For example, short expiry. Please don't buy vaccines which are on near expiry. Of course, which are expired. Expired vaccines. These vaccines are actually expired. So it is important that we don't buy them. It can be due to maternal antibodies. Of course, every animal or every bird that is hatched is they come with maternal antibodies. Some of them are just naturally from the mother. Some of them are due to the vaccines that were given to the mother. So there are vaccines where, if, for example, in goats, if you vaccinate Clostridia, if 6 months towards, or even during pregnancy, it will confer some immunity to these young kids that actually have been given birth to. So, but at certain situations, these maternal antibodies can actually hinder vaccine, can hinder the working of the vaccine. So you give the antigen, expecting that it will elicit the body immune system to produce antibodies, and then in the long run, the antibodies actually just hammer. They actually kill, or they work on the antigen before it does its work. So you need to very much follow the vaccination schedule of the manufacturer. If they say you're supposed to give rabies at this specific time or after, please don't give before. Otherwise, you will end up doing nothing. So our next point is exposure before the immunity exposure before immunity develops. Now, so sometimes you vaccinate today, and then the birds are exposed again to a higher dose of the disease, of the pathogen, either that same day or a day after, before it actually before the vaccine works. So as you vaccinate, be very conscious about biosecurity. As I told you, that vet coming to your farm should not come with the pathogen. So they need to, because they're coming vaccinated, they also need to go through the foot bath, of course, take a shower, do the preliminary preparations before entering or accessing your farm. Otherwise, they will end up infecting the birds before the vaccine elicits the immunity. That is exposure before the immunity actually develops. It most happens with poultry. Health status of the animal. Please, you need to vaccinate the animals when they are not sick. The animals should be healthy, or they should be normal. The animals should feed well. We are looking at nutrition. Let me write it here. Nutrition. They need to eat well before. Sometimes if you're going to vaccinate and you're not certain, you better give a multivitamin to your animals, so that they are really pushed up. They need to not be suffering from any disease. or diseases which are immunocompromising. Yeah, so because you actually adding a burden to this animal to work on your what, on to produce antibodies naturally by the effect of the antigen or the vaccine. Strain differences. Now, sometimes, of course, in some countries in Africa here, including ours, the diagnostic levels are still low, but we need to be very conscious about the strain we are vaccinating against. It is, for example, we have a lot of strains of IB in the country, and sometimes you may get a strain which is not the strain you're actually having at the farm. So you vaccinate with another strain of IB, and then you have a different strain at your farm. Pathogens mutate with time, and they kind of make different strains. Age. Now, age is almost like time. You don't have to vaccinate a bird which is, or an animal which is so young, or because of the effect of maternal antibodies, and not so old. Of course, the older you become, the less the less the animal is able to generate antibodies against certain diseases. Now, all these factors and more eh, can actually cause vaccine failure. So you vaccinate your animals against the disease, and then they suffer the same disease after some time, yet you're sure that what you gave is actually against that disease. It can be due to any of these factors. What do you have to do? One, be conscious about these factors. Most importantly, biosecurity. In some of our coming episodes, we are going to discuss in detail what biosecurity entails, what it actually, what you need to do to actually improve on your biosecurity. Of course, if you want that video, if you want to watch it, kindly subscribe and then turn on the notification bar so that when the video comes, you don't actually miss out. This is Impact Farming 256.